Confession time. I broke the van.
Welcome to Chaos in a Crafter.
And when I say broke the van, I mean it literally wasn't able to drive. So when I replaced the seats with these swiveling captain's chairs, I knew that I might have a problem with the fact that the seatbelt and seat occupancy sensors weren't connected. I was expecting it to just give me some yellow warning lights on the dashboard, but for the van to still be drivable. And I thought, well, I'll worry about how we fix that problem down the line. But because this is an automatic vehicle, the vehicle's got a little bit more control over what it decides to do. And because it wasn't detecting that there were seat belts plugged in, it was refusing to let the van shift into drive. So every time you tried to shift into drive or reverse, it would kick it back to park in about half a second later. So you just physically couldn't drive the van. So I had to try and figure out how to fix the problem and fix it quickly, because I had to leave the house in the van today to go and visit a van conversion specialist about installing our new rear seats. And I wanted to talk you through how I went about fixing it, because there's a lot of conflicting information on the internet and none of it actually helped me. So the problem we've got is that there are two sensors attached to these van seats. Well, two for the driver's seat, two for the middle seat, and two for the passenger seats. There's actually 6 sensors. One is a vehicle occupancy sensor, and that detects the weight of someone sitting on the chair. You can fool that by putting a bag of shopping or whatever, and it will confuse it and think there's someone sitting there. And then you've got seatbelt sensors, which detect whether or not their seatbelts are clicked in. So it uses the two together to figure out if it should display a warning light or what should happen. So if it detects there's someone sitting in it and they don't detect a seatbelt, it sends a warning light and refuses to let the van shift into drive. I knew that was going to be a problem, so I bought some resistors off of Amazon, a little collection of lots of different resistors to plug into the wiring harness under the seat to fool the van into thinking that there was a seatbelt clicked in, or that there wasn't somebody sitting in the seats. And I thought, well, the easiest way is if you just fool the occupancy sensors into thinking that there's nobody sitting in the seat, then it won't even ask for the seatbelt. It won't even check whether or not the seatbelts need to be plugged in. It didn't work, and the reason why is because I followed a number of people online who are posting about the resistance of the resistors that were necessary for the sensors. Based on different sources, there were people telling me that I needed some either 2.2, 2.8 or even up to 3.3 ohm resistors for the seat belts, and 8,200 ohms, so 8.2 kilo ohm resistors for the occupancy sensors. Tried those, wouldn't fix it, and I had a bit of a panic. That was until I realized, well, what actually is a sensor? The sensor just detects the change in resistance from one state to another. And what that meant was, practically, what did I have to do? Well, I needed to figure out what resistance fooled the occupancy sensors into thinking that there was somebody not sitting in the seat. However, then I was left in the position where the van thought that there was nobody sitting in the seats. So it didn't put any warning lights on the dashboard. Brilliant, yay. Except when I tried to put it into gear, the van was confused because there was nobody sitting in the seats, but there was also no seatbelt clicked in, so the van wouldn't move. It just kind of jumped into park every time I moved it. And it was at that point I realised, you're not trying to fool the van into thinking that there's nobody sat in it. You're trying to fool the van into thinking that the seatbelts are clicked in, and that changes the resistance across that seatbelt sensor. I was very lucky that I still had this original chair that I could test this, but all I had to do was stretch that seatbelt across, click it into the old seat, and then retest the resistance. Let me just show you. So this is the underneath of the original driver's seat, which thankfully I still had in my possession. And you can follow the various sensors. So you can follow the occupancy sensor, which is under this seat cushion here. And that's got these two white wires which come up to this mini harness, and then the brown and white wires, and then you can follow the brown and white wires down here to where they connects to the wiring harness, and there's the brown and white wires there. So the brown and white wires sit in those holes there, and then that enables me to use my multimeter to figure out what the resistance across those is. So you'll have to excuse me because I don't have enough hands to hold the camera and do this, but so you can see by testing that there is a resistance across there of 336 ohms. Okay, so you need 336 ohms in order for that occupancy sensor to think that there's nobody sat in the seat. And then you can test the seatbelt sensor as well by testing the other two, and incidentally it comes up with 400 ohms. Your seats may vary, but mine is a 2025 VW Crafter, so I realised, right, this seatbelt sensors need 400 ohm resistors, and the closest I had was a 330 ohm, which is close enough to 336 that I was able to use that. So I put those resistors in, and lo and behold, the seatbelt lights went away. Brilliant. You can now see that I've stretched the seatbelt into the original seat, so it's now clicked in. And what we will now do is retest the resistance across that circuit. But what you can see now that we've clicked the seatbelt in, it's changed the resistance across that circuit to display 100 ohms, 100.5 ohms, which means that putting the resistor in at 400 ohms was telling the van that the seatbelt is not clicked in. Now we've tested it with the seatbelt clicked in and it's 100 ohms, we now know that the resistance it's expecting is 100 ohms. I've just come round to the front of the driver's seat now to show you the wiring harness. It's all taped up, but if you're very careful, you can see just in there, there's a little shiny bit there. That is one of the legs of the resistors that I've pushed into the circuit. So that is now a 100 ohm resistor on the seatbelt and a 330 ohm resistor on the occupancy sensor. And what that does is it makes sure that there's no faults, and it also makes sure that the van believes that that seatbelt is clicked in. That has now convinced it that we are safe. One final thing I need to add is that once these faults are identified by your van, even if you fix the underlying cause of them, they will still show up on your dashboard and will still prevent you from driving the van until the fault codes are cleared so that the van understands they've been fixed. What that means you need to do is either take it to a dealership or ask a mobile mechanic to come out to you, or for about £60 you can buy an OBD scanner from, I bought mine from Amazon. This is an OBD11 which connects to your phone via Bluetooth. You can buy cheaper ones, but what it will do is it will scan your vehicle for faults, list them off to you and allow you to clear them. Now if you haven't fixed the underlying problem, the code won't clear, it'll immediately pop back up. But once you have managed to put the resistors into place and fix it, then it will allow you to clear those fault codes away and get on with your day. And the port to connect this into is directly under the driver, under the steering column on the driver's side, obviously. And this specific one is powered by the engine. It has no battery and it connects to your phone via Bluetooth and an app. But there are some kind of slightly more traditional ones which have a little screen built into them and they plug directly in and have their own power source. This is just a temporary measure to make sure that the van was drivable. Obviously, it's far safer to make sure you've got the appropriate sensors in. Vehicle occupancy sensors aren't necessary as far as I'm aware, although disclaimer, I'm not an expert, so please don't listen to this advice. But seatbelt sensors are a requirement of MOTs. And if the MOT tester sees that you've done this to the circuit, then it's probably going to be an MOT test fail. My van seats that I've bought do actually have seatbelt sensors built into them, but the wire wasn't long enough to connect to the wiring harness. My next job is to wire it up properly so that the van will then detect the actual occupancy of the seats. But in the meantime, if you have an automatic van like mine, where you just need to get somewhere temporarily, then that is a good bypass. My van needed 330 and 100 ohm resistors, but yours might be different. These kits come with about 20 different resistances, and it was about £5-6 on Amazon. Very good if you want to trial and error it, although a multimeter in the original seats is the quickest way of telling for certain what your van needs. Panic over, I had a real worry that I'd broken my van beyond my capability to repair, but actually you spend a bit of time, you think about the way things work, and you realise actually it's not that difficult if you understand what's going on. But if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to try and troubleshoot your van, so do send me a message or send me a comment and I will do my best to respond to it. Cheers.
Our lovely new seats may have broken the van, but luckily George managed to fix it. Not the most glamorous job in a van build, but definitely one of the most important. If this helped you out, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe for more campervan chaos, fixes and the odd disaster along the way. See you next week.